My name is Terri Messenger, and I am
Hey, and welcome to Terri Messenger's Genius Zone. And, this is the place and the space where you are going to get your own free masterclass absolutely free. Hey, and welcome to Terri Messenger's Genius Zone. And this is the place and the space where every week we bring you epic, powerful, profound coaching, healing, mentorship, wisdom. And boy, what a show we've got. Now, you might be going, Terri, you say that every single week. And I promise to not disappoint, because this is going to be about a very profound biological reality and living in harmony with nature's laws, and even healing, and how you can approach illness with a completely different mindset than just the medical world. So for all of you that know me well, you may know that my husband, Dr. Ian Messenger, has been very, very unwell and has just been diagnosed, which has not yet been publicly announced of his diagnosis, but he has been given a critically very serious diagnosis, which will come about, I'm sure, in the show. But we're going to talk about how even every symptom, whether it is simply a ache, a pain, a disease, and how every illness has a story. And that story may just become your glory. Now, this wonderful, wise woman that I'm about to bring on, her life began with trauma. So you're going to learn about how she had invasive surgery at the age of 4 and what happened to her as she was left in pain and struggled for so long, and even ended up in a wheelchair. But she never gave up. And her journey reveals that disease is not an error, but a biological program of survival. And this is a crusade that she has gone on through ministry, through profound teachings. And I don't want to take all of this and say it all, because I would love to give this beautiful woman, Bonnie, and this lady, Bonnie Sheldon, is an incredible woman, believing that movement is life. Harmony is health. So with no further ado, let's bring on the beautiful Bonnie Sheldon. Hello, Bonnie. How are you?
Oh, hello. Thank you, Terri, and thank you for those kind words. I'm very well and happy to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm very, very excited. This is going to be more than different. And it's going to be, such I guess, an experience that I feel honored to have. And there's many people who have got the chance and will have the chance to listen to this and really understand about your own story and even their story, and how it has played such a significant role. But let's go back to the beginning. So you were born out of trauma. Can you talk me through that and what that means?
Yes, I was born with what is called a congenital disability. We used to call that a birth defect. So there was a problem with my pelvis, and I was not able to have that resolved at birth because you need to be a certain size to have surgery. And so they waited until I was 4. Certainly at age of a lot of awareness, and it was extremely traumatic surgery. just extremely traumatic. And afterwards, I had a lot of pain. I could not eat. I could not go to the bathroom. My back hurt, my stomach hurt, my neck hurt. And at that time, the doctors examined me. My mother was very concerned, and there was no visible problem. I was declared completely successful surgery and kind of dropped out of my medical records. At that time, we did not know about the vagus nerve. And I subsequently learned that my vagus nerve had not just been compressed and insulted, but actually damaged. So that I had dysregulated vagus nerve through my whole childhood, early upbringing, through teenage years. And that brought me pain. And I was essentially, I believe now, in looking back, I was in functional freeze because it hurt so much. And there were things I couldn't do. But my mother was a psychologist, and she believed that if there's nothing wrong, then let's work with it and get up and go. Very motivational. Come on, Bonnie, you can still do it. And so I would. She was a very strong lady. And so I would go and do what she suggested. And I became involved, thankfully, in many physical activities. I started to dance, gymnastics, baton twirling, and those things saved me because I was able to move and sweat. And my body was able to release the vagus nerve, all the toxins that were building up and all the compression and all the anxiety. I had an outlet, and that was a real benefit to me.
That's incredible. And I'm kind of getting this gist of like a yoga where you're literally shifting your body and shifting energy and just releasing it. And, it's even, my husband, Dr. Ian Messenger, and I still address him as the chiropractor. He says that life is movement and energy. And we need that. And so it's interesting that you hold that philosophy. So then you obviously went on a bit of a crusade as a result of, and I always say this about this show, because the Genius Zone always brings back people from their pain to their power. And you went on a crusade really to find the answers, but that sort of involved you moving through ministry and ministering in a wheelchair and even ministering and choreographing whilst in a wheelchair. So what happened? You then went into some matrix EFT, and I'm sure a lot of people out there have heard of EFT, emotional freedom technique. But whether they understand it from the full terminology, would you like to open that up and talk us through that?
Surely. EFT, Emotional Freedom Techniques, was developed by a man named Gary Craig in the 80s. And he built it on thought field therapy, which was a much more complicated way of looking at the fact that the acupuncture meridians, when we touch them and think about certain thoughts, we can actually change what's going on in our brain and our emotions. And at that time, back in the 80s, there was really no science behind this, but people found anecdotally, gee whiz, it worked. And millions of people started using it. And now there is science behind it. And we know that by touching certain points, tapping with 2 or 3 fingers on certain specific points on the hand and body and torso. And it can't just be any points. We now have science that you can't just tap anywhere and gee whiz, it works. These specific acupuncture meridian juncture points, while articulating the emotion, the situation we're addressing, or the belief, we can reduce the emotional intensity. And they're the hand points on the head. This is an optional point, the third eye, the inner eye. And these are the basic EFT, this is an optional point. This goes directly to the vagus nerve, the wrist point, and then back to the hand points. And we have some finger points that we use in the next modality, matrix re-imprinting. But one of the amazing things that has come with EFT is that as the years have developed, there's been a lot of research. And we have over 300 studies now, and several meta-studies. And Dr. Peter Stapleton's fabulous study would show that in one EFT session, we can absolutely reduce the cortisol by 45%. And that is amazing. We can just reduce that cortisol by 45% in one EFT session.
That is absolutely incredible. So I know that your studies sort of started out in, you looked at a lot of somatics and Virginia Satir's work and advanced therapy and later EFT and matrix re-imprinting. So where does the matrix re-imprinting come into this? Because as I said, there's the EFT, but what exactly is the matrix re-imprinting that makes it different?
Well, matrix re-imprinting was developed by a EFT master, Carl Dawson. And in EFT, we look at a session from how we feel about it now, a situation, of how we feel about it now. Say we were bullied as a child. We go back and we look at that situation. We don't look at how the child felt then. We look at what is our emotional imprint from that event, and we work on it. And Carl was in a training, and he was giving a demonstration, and the woman said, "Can't I just go help her?" Beautiful insight. And he said, "Yes, do go help her." And so matrix re-imprinting was evolved, but we don't look at it as if it were a movie, but we actually enter the scene as our present self, as the former self, and we can talk to our younger selves in this format. And we can never change reality, but we can change in an emotional playground a better reality that creates a different emotional imprint. And it's as if the trauma that was there gets slowly erased. It doesn't go away, but the emotion of it slowly will disappear, or quickly will disappear. And you're left with the energy of a better time and place. And it's just beautiful. And we use different points. We use the brain points, or there's a more modified version, and we will probably do some matrix today.
That's so exciting. And that's what I was going to say. Stay tuned, because it's going to get very heated up around here. Now, I have a question on the EFT. I mean, I'm a master in NLP and hypnosis, and I do understand a lot about the unconscious, the 5-dimensional, the quantum, and all of those elements. And I do have to say, matrix re-imprinting is such a great terminology. I love it so much. And, it's really explanatory of what we do with NLP timelining when we're taking people back to a different dimension and a different era of their life to heal the inner child. And I'd never really thought of it as that word matrix re-imprinting, but I have to say that is just really, I love it. I think it's a very sophisticated word. My question is, can you do the EFT, that kind of work, on someone that is unable to perhaps move or do it for themselves?
Well, it is possible to do surrogate work, but that requires an agreement and also an ethical safety component where we know we will do no harm under any circumstances. That's the primary concern, is to do no harm. So if someone is unable to work, we approach them, and I'll pre-frame this a little. We're going to talk about that through the relational field of those around them initially. And we do know that we have coherence. How math has shown us, I can talk about that a little more fully later too. But we have coherence with those around us. So we approach someone who's perhaps not able to speak for themselves first through those around them and establish a heart coherence, and then see whether or not it's possible to approach. And in no case are we treating that person, but we are enabling the energy to possibly have since people are on the same wavelength, and the closer you are to that person, the more you're on the same wavelength, there will be potentially an energetic connection.
Oh, that's amazing. I just love that. So I guess because, it's going to really be quite powerful for people to witness what you are going to be doing in just a moment. And are there any kind of disclaimers that we need to make to our audience? Like sometimes if I'm, for example, doing some hypnosis, I would require to say, please do not drive a car while you are listening to this. Is there any disclaimers that you would like to say before we kind of hit the road running?
Yes, I actually do have something I'd like to say. What we're sharing today is basically educational and supportive for everyone involved, hopefully, including Ian, Terri's husband. It does not diagnose or treat the disease. We are not in any way involved with the medical condition per se. The ramifications of what we do, we can hope for the best, but we are not actively in an online session treating this disease, which is a serious medical, often fatal neurological disorder. And so we would not want to be in that kind of ethical compromised position. But if your loved one has these issues, always, if you're doing this kind of work, watch out for any danger signs and consult medical authority immediately. And because Terri's husband cannot consent, and this is a public recording, we're not going to conduct the session on him. We're not going to be fully surrogate and call up his inner child. That would be perhaps intrusive to him and his spirit. Instead, we'll work with Terri's experience as a wife, as a caregiver, someone who loves him, her grief, her fear, her love, so that she can be more resourced and present and contributing in a positive way to that relational field and how it may affect him.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And, I just want to give a little bit of an example here in Bonnie's personal healing. As she accelerated through moving and dancing, and all of those things came from default, like you did that and you found that out. I would like to add that when you began working with someone, you were actually working with a man with Meniere's disease. And this was a classic, but would you like to talk about the symptoms he had and then what you discovered as the root cause on the emotional level?
Yes, well, now we're moving out of EFT and matrix into meta consciousness, which is what we're also going to be working with. The three modalities here today. And meta consciousness, which is developed by Penelope Kroll, based on German New Medicine, is based on a theory work that was done by Dr. Hammer back in the late 70s and early 80s. And he looked at medicine not from a pathological point of view where we take a disease and name it and then fight it, but from looking at the symptoms. And this came about because his son died of leukemia, and he believed that there was a mind-body connection, and he wanted to explore that. And he developed 5 biological laws. The first one is that a disease is a reaction to an emotional shock. And the second is that that emotional shock will go through several phases of shock, and distress, and then regeneration, rest, and recuperation. And in various stages, we can have healing depending on where in the body that happens. And he posited that as we look at the brain, and now the triune brain is still technically a theory. So when we look at the brain in 5 parts, it's still theoretical, but we have so much anecdotal information. We work with this. When we look at the brain, as each part of the brain in this theory evolved, say, for example, the brainstem, certain organs evolved at the same moment. So in the brainstem, the survival organs evolved, like as in the reproductive and the digestion system. And so each part of the brain has its own areas that it is responsible or relates to. And so wherever we have a tissue or a problem, it does have some component that relates to that brain relay, and each brain relay has its own conflicts associated with it. Naturally, survival is about, can I survive? Or what is happening to me where I don't feel I can survive? And each relay has a conflict. And so Meniere's disease, that's Menieres is what I'm saying, Meniere's disease, this is an imbalance in the inner ear. And when we look at it from a meta perspective, it's related to a falling conflict. And so when I did my research, because no one person can know the whole human body, we do have to research this to do a meta-analysis. But when I researched it, I found out that this was a falling conflict. And so I said to him, was there a time when you fell dramatically or saw someone fall? And he said, yes, I saw my wife have a stroke and she fell down and she's still very disabled. And he'd never dealt with that as a trauma. And in meta-consciousness, we talk about those shocks in terms of trauma, and we define trauma as an UDIN, UDIN. It's a moment that's unexpected, isolating, dramatic, and you have no resources for it. You don't know how to cope. And that was a classic UDIN for him. And so we went back and we've used EFT, tapping, and matrix re-imprinting to go through all of the things that happened during that stroke. And he has at this point not yet had the brain surgery. I won't say that we've totally resolved the Meniere's disease, but he is now aware of where it might have come from. That alone has brought him an immense amount of peace, because almost everybody who has a serious illness says, why me? Why is this happening? How did this, I was going along and suddenly I'm falling on the floor. The why me becomes more resolved, or not. People don't have to buy into the theory. Some clients say, oh, well, that's interesting, but no, that wasn't. But for him, it was. And so we're still working through. But for me, that was a beautiful moment to say, for a period of time. I won't say I saved him from brain surgery, but that he was able to guide himself to an understanding where he's able to potentially avoid it or certainly delay it. I was so moved. I said, I want to do this with my clients.
That's incredible. So just to give a little bit of an example here, the first biological law, the iron rule of cancer, and that comes from apparently conflict and shock. So this is just a kind of a little bit of a example of the way that Bonnie, works and what meta consciousness is all about, and the illness and how it originates from, actually Dirk Hammer syndrome, an unexpected, highly acute conflict shock that catches a person completely off guard. So it's interesting how, and I do believe this very much so, I'm the sort of person, I am so much caught up in this kind of spiritualism, if you will, that even last night I dropped a glass of red wine and it literally smashed and it went everywhere, all over a brand new rug. And I always feel that everything has a spiritual meaning. So how much more can it be credible that the body and the way that our biology is, and how, I mean, everything, they say disease is really dis-ease and dis-ease of the mind. So, I guess we'll just go through quickly, briefly. Though the second biological law apparently is 2 phases of disease, provided the conflict is resolved, which is what you were just talking about, and how it works through that. The third one is ontogenetic system of tumors. Are you, I guess this is something that you've kind of looked into. The fourth biological law is the ontogenetic system of microbes. And then the fifth one is the quintessence. I can't even say that word, the quintessence. Every disease has a meaning.
Yes. I'll answer that. Yes. Now, I will also add that the reason we are no longer just talking about German new medicine is that we've expanded from Dr. Hammer's point of view. So Dr. Hammer and many of his followers believed that cancer could not be cured. And in meta-consciousness, they did not have a way to resolve those biological thoughts. So when we moved into first meta-health and now meta-consciousness, where we have tools like EFT, or any practitioner can work with, accomplished practitioner in certain fields can work with meta-consciousness, the theories. Some doctors, some nurses use it. A heart math practitioner I trained with uses this. But we have a way now to work with the trauma. So some of the biological laws are absolutely relevant, and others, yes, they're relevant and have meaning. But that last one, I'm going to ask you to read that last one again. It's so profound.
Okay, the fifth one, the quintessence, every disease has a meaning.
That is the main issue. Once we consider that illness might not be an attack from the outside, something we're going to fight, a pathology that we're going to treat with pills and medicine, but that there is a meaning behind what is going on, because things in nature don't happen accidentally. A seed is planted, it grows, it gets enough water, it grows well. It doesn't get enough water, it might be stunted. An animal is attacked, it's injured. Perhaps it was attacked because it was thirsty, so it went to the water. There was a logic to what happened behind it. And it's the same thing. We are essentially, as mammals, we're animals. And why would we have a different biological logic than the entire world, than the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom? Our logic would be different. And we're suddenly struck by these sudden things. No, there is a story behind the illness or the accident. And it can be very surprising. It can be very deep. It can be very old. It can even be ancestral or genetic. But there is a story behind what happens to us.
Incredible. Very, very, very powerful. So we obviously talked on the fact that I'm going through a crisis at the moment, and it's actually with my husband, who's just been diagnosed with very fatally critical neurological issue, where it began out as what we thought was vascular dementia, and it now has been diagnosed with, I cannot pronounce this for the life of me, but it's CJD. It is a variant that also is known as mad cow disease. So over to you, Bonnie, because I feel that you're going to kind of address it from, obviously this is we talk about an existential crisis for my husband, but it's also been very much a huge crisis for myself as well. And there's been so many things involved that has also brought forth in the same breath a lot of my strengths, but has come at a very huge cost. It's not been easy. So I'm very grateful to have this session and demonstrate your incredible, just your wisdom. What I would really, really love to do right now is some reflection, so that as we create this beautiful podcast, it will be, done in such a way that we will, obviously edit it, but we want to make sure that people that get to hear it really understand the power of what has just happened. So perhaps what we can do now is, firstly, I'm just going to talk about my own personal experience. And I
was wanting to hear that, of course. That's the next part, yeah.
Yes, because this is the most important part. So, the experience of what has just happened on a profoundly negative situation, which is now quite a phenomenally and profoundly harmonious, has brought a lot of harmony. So there is this, it's almost like my brain has been untapped, like the fog has been removed. And, there's a sense that, during this, and I love the verbiage you use. So when you're taking people through this is not just a normal EFT session. This is a phenomenal matrix re-imprinting that happens through, your beautiful guidance, Bonnie, of taking your person that you're working with back to the past to sort of heal the future. And I guess what we can do now is open up to a person listening to this that's praying for your services and really, really, really requires this. Do you feel that your particular client that you attract tends to have a certain something that they're dealing with, like a feeling, like an energy or an emotion that they're really grappling with? Or do you find that it's just basically trauma, or what's the theme?
I seem to attract people who have complex medical conditions, serious, very serious medical conditions, or issues that reflect my own.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm really familiar with bones, muscles, fascia, digestion, all of my own issues, heart and connective tissue, anything that's affected me. It's like automatic. I know the relays, I know them, but anyone else, the research is very easy. But the people who come to me are the people who often have not been able to find medical answers, or they have an answer that says there is no hope, and they want hope. And I do believe that there's power of healing and hope. And so I don't offer hope. We're not results attached. We offer understanding, and that often does evolve into a positive outcome.
That's absolutely phenomenal. And so you spent a lot of time in a wheelchair, and it doesn't get much worse than that. So I know that's the situation that my husband is. And so would you put it down to this kind of work that has helped you move, from that sort of, at some points of your life, you talked about it being quite paralyzing, to where you are now? Do you put it down to metaconscious work, matrix re-imprinting?
Yes, very, very much so. Although I do have to say I'm still working on my health problems, but I also include somatics. If I had not, and by that I do include Qigong and yoga. I'm a certified yoga teacher, certified yoga Qigong, and I do it all. I mean, I'm on that mat hours a day. I take responsibility for my own health, and that's part of Penny's program. Is I will do what it takes to be 100% healthy. Sometimes it hurts when I'm getting on the mat, but I do add that. I 100% believe if I hadn't found EFT, I would be dead by now. And when I hit Matrix, I was at a very crucial point also, and I would not still be here. So I definitely credit that. But I do add that I think often there can be a somatic component that an EFT, when we do the evaluation, the SUD scale, if someone's ears are still up here, but there is 0, and they're saying, I don't feel any fear, I know a little better that there might still be some fear there. And that's when we move, into, or even before, into working with the body. In many of my sessions, I include gentle somatics, or if people are interested, I have a studio where we will have a somatic session. I had one client, and we did so many sessions, and we could not find that original trauma. And I said, you need somatics. And she came back and she said, my body knew what my mind had forgotten.
Wow, that's amazing, because the body doesn't lie, and it's like the library.
And Yoga for 12-Step Recovery, their motto is, the issues are in the tissues.
Oh, wow.
And I believe that too. I think it's all, the cognitive stuff with the meta is wonderful. If that's helped me tremendously, but it's all a big picture. You can't just do it with your mind. Your body has to get on board too. If you're not walking in nature,
you're not living. And there was one detail that we didn't mention here, and that is that you are 74 years young. And, that brings me to the ageless mind and timeless body. And I'm wondering if that's got a lot to do with the fact that you are on the yoga mat, you are moving your body, you are able to express yourself, you're able to utilize these tools. That is a huge contribution. But you say that age is just a number, and I can't help thinking that is absolutely right. I mean, my father, I'm not even allowed to say his age, but the fact is that for what he ought to be proud of his age, because in golden years where many people are very, very not so fortunate, he is still dancing, he still works, he still does all those things, and he would have to agree that it is also just a number. And I guess too, with the fact that having taken me through this, I just want to say to people out there that if you believe that you're holding on to trauma, whether it is in the mind, like probably for me, it was probably more of an emotional crisis, where for Ian, it is, been very much a physical crisis. So, this is the art of the work that Bonnie is doing, where you're able to really resolve. And I feel that, this is one of the things that happens, in the world, especially if we do lose our loved ones, and when we lose loved ones, that deep regret of, oh, if only, or I wished I'd done this. But I feel that this is where almost the presupposition of what NLP says comes into play in a big way, and that is that it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And yeah, if I was kind of likening it to the work you're doing, it may not be childhood, but it's never too late to have a happy past, because our past is creating our future. And so what you're really doing here is giving people that incredible gift of going back and almost recoding, rewiring, re-imprinting.
That's it. Exactly. Yes.
Sorry. So therefore, by doing that then kind of reconditions the mind and the body so that it can be reconditioned for the greater future. And that sort of leaves me with the question that I always love to ask on this show, and that is, it wouldn't be fair for me to miss this question, especially with such a phenomenal, gifted, wise woman like yourself. If you jump off the show and you thought, oh, I wished I had have shared that piece of information, it may be something you want to reiterate that we've already spoken about or touched on, or it may be something that you just really would love that person to hear that is praying for your services. What words of wisdom would you impart?
I think I would say that the first step is to consider whether that person or you or whoever might be listening is ready to accept agency or determination or control over the next part of their life. If it's going to be kind of riding along and what happens, and that's life, there's not a lot of room for growth. If you're able to say, yes, I'm still in the game. I want to grow. I don't even know how. Or I'm in so much pain, emotional, physical, whatever. I need help. That help is there for both of those conditions. And that, well, it may be too late if you're diabetic and 65 and you've been living on junk food your whole life to completely reverse your health condition. But you can certainly extend your longevity, increase your vitality, decrease your weight, stop the glucose spiking, and get a control on what's happening in your life. So if you're ready to say, I can be in charge, and it's possible I could regulate these bizarre emotions I have. I don't have to live in anger or whatever it is. Then that would be a great step.
Oh boy, absolutely, 100%. So if you have heard the wisdom of the incredibly wise Bonnie Sheldon, then we have all the information in the show notes. You can get in contact with Bonnie and you can book in your session. Let me tell you, you will not regret that, because this is extremely sacred, divine, and incredible work. And, I'm sure, like myself, Bonnie would agree that this is just the gift that, we're a conduit that's coming through you, and, you are being utilized to really set the captives free in so many people. So I just want to extend the most incredible, gracious, and just amazing amount of gratitude and thankfulness to you, Bonnie, for what you've done for myself, and unwittingly, I can safely say for my husband as well.
Thank you so much. And I feel honored to participate in this process with you also.
Well, you have a beautiful night, and remember, you have one life, so absolutely make the most of it. You deserve to be set free. Get in contact with this beautiful lady, and we will see you on our next edition of Terri Messenger's Genius Zone.
A show where we have explored through this various topic, along with all the exciting new topics that we bring every week to enhance your personal mastery of excellence. Now, I'd love you to do me a favor. In fact, be part of the Legacy 1 million that I have in the vision for 2028. If you know someone who really would benefit from this recording, from this episode, please share it with them. And when you subscribe, you get notified every week of our episode as soon as it drops. So let's do that legacy thing. Let's share, let's care, let's enrich. And I look forward to bringing you another week of the most enriching content. So until next time, stay inspired, stay awesome, and keep on mastering your excellence.